The space station called Harmony's Edge floated in the dark emptiness between stars. It was a place where many alien species lived and worked together. Some came to trade, some came to study, some came because they had nowhere else to go. The station was old and large, with hundreds of corridors and thousands of rooms. It smelled like recycled air and strange alien foods. Dr. Park had lived on the station for 2 years. Which meant she studied alien life forms. She was a small woman with short black hair and tired eyes. She worked long hours and ate her meals alone. Most humans on the station kept to themselves. It was safer that way. The galaxy was not a friendly place for humans. They were new to space travel. They were small and weak compared to most alien species. They had no claws, no armor, no venom. Other species looked at humans and saw easy prey. So humans learned to be careful. They learned to stay quiet and not cause trouble. Followed these rules. She did her work, wrote her reports, and avoided the dangerous species, especially They were the most feared species on the station. They looked like massive cats but with 6 legs instead of 4. They stood 3 meters tall when they walked upright. Their fur was thick and shiny, changing colors in the light. Their eyes glowed yellow in the dark. Their claws could cut through metal like paper. Everyone avoided They were apex predators, which meant they were at the top of the food chain on their home planet. They had never been prey. They had never known fear. They walked through the station like they owned it, and no one dared to tell them otherwise. Had seen many times in the corridors. She always pressed herself against the wall and waited for them to pass. They never looked at her. To them, she was too small to notice. That changed on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. Was walking back to her quarters after a long shift in the lab. She was thinking about dinner and sleep. She was not thinking about anything important. Then she heard a sound. It was a small sound, a whimper like a child crying. Stopped walking. She listened. The sound came from a maintenance corridor to her left. It was a narrow passage filled with pipes and cables. No one went there unless they had to. She should have ignored it. She should have walked away. That was the smart thing to do, the safe thing. But had never been very good at ignoring crying children. She stepped into the maintenance corridor. It was dark and cramped. She had to duck under pipes and step over cables. The whimpering sound grew louder. She followed it around a corner and found the source. It was a cub. His heart stopped for a moment. She had never seen a cub before. It was small, about the size of a large dog. Its fur was softer than adult fur, colored in shades of silver and blue. Its eyes were too big for its face. It looked up at and whimpered again. The cub was tangled in cables. Somewhere in its exploration, it had gotten wrapped up in wires and could not get free. The more it struggled, the cables became. Some of the wires had cut into its fur, leaving small patches of blood. Knew she should leave. She should find an adult and tell them about the cub. That was the correct procedure. Touching even a cub was dangerous. It might bite. Its parents might attack. There were so many reasons to walk away. The cub whimpered again, its big yellow eyes filled with tears. Sighed and knelt down. "Okay, little one," she said softly, "let me help you." She worked slowly and carefully. The cables were old and tangled badly. She had to find where each wire started and ended. She had to untangle them one by one. The cub watched her with wide eyes. It did not bite. It did not scratch. It just watched and waited. "You got yourself into quite a mess," said. She talked to keep the cub calm. She talked to keep herself calm, too. "How did you even get in here? Where are your parents?" The cub made a small chirping sound. It was almost like an answer. After 10 minutes, freed the cub from the cables. But when she looked at its fur, she frowned. The fur was matted and tangled all over, not just where the cables had been. There were knots and tangles across its back and sides. Some of the knots looked old and painful. Reached into her pocket. She always carried a small brush with her. It was a habit from Earth. She used it on her own hair when she was stressed. Without thinking too much about it, she began to brush the cub's fur. The cub froze. Its whole body went stiff. Froze too, suddenly afraid she had made a terrible mistake. Then the cub made a sound had never heard before. It was a deep, rumbling sound that vibrated through its whole body. The sound filled the small corridor. It took a moment to understand what it was. The cub was purring. Relaxed a little, she kept brushing. The knots came out slowly. The cub's fur became smooth and soft. The cub leaned into her touch, pressing its small body against her legs. It purred louder and louder. Lost track of time. She sat on the dirty floor of the maintenance corridor, brushing an alien predator's fur, humming an old song her grandmother used to sing. The cub closed its eyes and purred. For a little while, the galaxy did not seem so dangerous. Then she heard heavy footsteps. Looked up, her blood went cold. A full-grown stood at the entrance of the corridor. It was massive, filling the entire space. Its fur was dark purple, almost black. Its yellow eyes glowed in the dim light. Its claws were extended, each one as long as hand. This was Ambassador, the leader of the delegation. Had seen her from far away at diplomatic meetings. Up close, she was terrifying. She radiated danger like heat from a fire. Stared at, her eyes moved to the cub in its lap. Her claws scraped against the metal floor. Could not move. She could not speak. She was going to die. She was certain of it. The cub opened its eyes. It saw and made a happy chirping sound. It did not move from its lap. It pressed closer to her, still purring. Its claws slowly retracted. Her body, which had been tense and ready to attack, relaxed slightly. She stared at the scene before her, her cub, her precious child, sleeping contentedly in the arms of a human. "You," his voice was deep and rough like stones grinding together. "You touched my cub." "I'm sorry," managed to say. Her voice was barely a whisper. She was tangled in the cables. She was hurt. "I just wanted to help." Said nothing. She walked forward slowly. Each step made the floor shake. She stopped directly in front of and looked down at her. Closed her eyes and waited for death. Instead, she felt something warm and wet touch her forehead. She opened her eyes, had pressed her nose against his head. In culture, would later learn, this was a gesture of deep gratitude. "Her name is," said quietly. "She has been missing for 3 hours, I thought." She stopped. Her voice cracked slightly. "Thank you, human. Thank you for saving my daughter." Looked down at the sleeping cub. Purred softly in her lap, completely at peace. "You're welcome," said. She did not know it yet, but her life had just changed forever. News traveled fast on a space station. There were no secrets in a place where everyone lived so close together. By the next morning, everyone on Harmony's edge knew what had happened in the maintenance corridor. A human had touched a cub. A human had brushed its fur. The cub had purred. This was impossible. Everyone knew it was impossible. They did not allow anyone to touch them. Physical contact was sacred to their species. It meant either violence or deep intimacy. There was nothing in between. A stranger touching a was like declaring war. A stranger touching a cub was like asking to die. But the human had done it, and she was still alive. The other species on the station talked about nothing else. They whispered in corridors and mess halls. They sent messages to friends on other stations and planets. The story spread across the galaxy like fire. Tried to ignore it. She went to work like normal. She did her research like normal. She ate her meals alone like normal. But everywhere she went, people stared at her. Some looked curious. Some looked afraid. Some looked at her like she was already dead. 3 days after the incident, received a message on her personal terminal. It was from Ambassador. It contained only 3 words: "Come to me." His hands shook as she read the message. She thought about ignoring it. She thought about hiding in her quarters and never coming out. But she knew that would not work. If I wanted to find you, they would find you. Running would only make things worse. She walked to the section of the station. It was in the outer ring, far from the other living quarters. The corridors there were wider and taller, built to fit bodies. The lights were dimmer. The air smelled different, like pine forests and something metallic. 2 guards stood at the entrance to the ambassador's quarters. They were huge, even bigger than. Their fur was gray and from many battles. They looked at like she was an insect. "The ambassador is expecting me," said. Her voice did not shake. She was proud of that. The guard stepped aside without a word. The door slid open. Walked inside. The ambassador's quarters were large and warm. The floor was covered with soft materials that felt like moss. Strange plants grew in corners, filling the air with sweet smells. In the center of the room, Ambassador sat on a raised platform, was curled up beside her, sleeping peacefully. Watched enter. Her yellow eyes followed every movement. She did not speak. Stopped a few meters away. She bowed her head in the way she had learned was respectful too. "Ambassador, you wanted to see me." "Yes." His voice was calm, but there was something strange in it. Something could not identify. "Sit." Sat on the floor. It was the only option. There were no chairs in rooms. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Stared at the floor. The silence was heavy and uncomfortable. Finally spoke. "Do you know why my people do not allow others to touch us?" "I have read some reports," said carefully. "Physical contact is very important in your culture. It has deep meaning." "Deep meaning," repeated. She made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Yes, you could say that. For us, touch is everything. It is how we show love. It is how we show trust. It is how we say things that words cannot say." She paused. Her eyes grew distant, like she was looking at something far away. "On our home world, we live in small family groups. We groom each other every day. It is how we bond. It is how we stay connected. A who is not groomed becomes lost, alone. The fur tangles and mats. The skin becomes painful. But the pain in the body is nothing compared to the pain in the heart." Listened quietly. She had never heard a speak like this. The reports she had read described them as cold and violent. They said nothing about loneliness. "When we came to space," continued, "we left our families behind. We left our home behind. We came to stations like this one where no one understands us, where everyone fears us. We have no one to groom us, no one to touch us. We suffer alone." Her voice dropped lower, softer. "We cannot groom ourselves. Our arms do not bend the right way. We cannot reach our own backs, our own shoulders. We need others. But here there are no others. Only strangers who run away when they see us." Felt something twist in her chest. It was a feeling she knew well, loneliness. She had felt it every day since coming to this station. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. Looked at her. For the first time, saw something in those yellow eyes that was not pride or anger. It was hope, small and fragile, like a candle flame in a dark room. "Because you touched my cub," said. "You brushed her fur, you did not run away, you did not hesitate, you just helped, like it was the most natural thing in the world." "She was hurt," said simply. "She was scared. I wanted to help her feel better." "Yes," leaned forward. "That is why I called you here. I have a request. It is a strange request. You may refuse. I will not be angry if you refuse, but I must ask." Waited. "Will you groom us?" asked. "Not just all of us. The on this station, will you brush our fur?" Blinked. Of all the things she had expected, this was not one of them. "You want me to brush everyone's fur?" "Yes." His voice was steady, but could hear the effort it took to say these words. "I know it is a lot to ask. I know we are frightening to you, but we are suffering. We have been suffering for years. Our fur is tangled and painful. Our hearts are empty. We need help. We need someone who is not afraid to touch us." She paused. Her next words came out like they were being pulled from somewhere deep inside. "We need kindness, and you are the first person in this galaxy who has shown us any." Sat in silence. She thought about everything she knew about the warnings, the danger, the stories of violence. Then she thought about that small, frightened cub tangled in cables. She thought about the purring. She thought about the matted fur and the old knots that must have caused so much pain. She looked at this massive, terrifying predator, this ambassador who ruled through fear and power, this mother who had been so afraid for her lost child, this lonely creature asking for help. "I will need more brushes," said. Stared at her. For a moment she did not move. Then she made a sound that did not recognize. It was rough and broken, like something cracking open. It took a moment to realize that was crying. "Thank you," whispered. "Thank you, human. You do not know what this means to us." Woke up at the sound of her mother's voice. She saw and made a happy chirping noise. She ran across the room and climbed into his lap, purring immediately. Laughed softly and began to stroke the cub's fur. "I think I'm starting to understand." She did not know yet how big this would become. She did not know that her simple act of kindness would change the relationships between species. She did not know that she was about to become the most important human in the galaxy. All she knew was that someone needed help, and she could give it. That was enough for now. Doctor worked in the logistics department of Harmony's Edge. His job was simple. People asked for supplies. He found the supplies and sent them where they needed to go. It was boring work, but liked boring. Boring meant safe. Boring meant predictable. In a galaxy full of danger, boring was good. When Dr. Park sent him a requisition form, he thought it was a joke. 500 grooming brushes, 200 bottles of fur conditioning oil, 50 specialized combs for removing tangles, 30 soft towels, and a room with temperature control and comfortable seating for large bodies. Read the form 3 times. Then he walked to his lab to ask her personally. "Are you serious?" he asked, holding up the form. "Very serious," said. She was organizing her desk, which usually meant she was nervous. "I need everything on that list, as soon as possible." 500 brushes. What are you going to do with 500 brushes? Stopped organizing. She looked at with an expression he had never seen before. It was determined and scared at the same time. "I'm going to brush fur," she said. Stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed. Then he stopped laughing when he realized she was not joking. "You're going to die," he said. "Maybe," admitted, "but I don't think so. I've already brushed 2 of them. They seem to like it." "They seem to like it," repeated slowly. "Though the giant murder cats, they like being brushed." "They purr," said. "It's actually very cute." Went back to his office and processed the requisition. He told himself he was just doing his job. He told himself it was not his problem if wanted to get herself killed. But he could not stop thinking about it. The purred. They liked being brushed. It did not make sense. He had to see it for himself. 1 week later, the grooming station was ready. It was a medium-sized room in the neutral zone of the station, where no species had official territory. Had covered the floor with soft mats. She had set the temperature to what found comfortable. She had arranged brushes and combs and oils on a small table. The first adult to arrive was not. It was a warrior named Thresh. Thresh was old and his fur was dark gray, marked with lines of white where old wounds had healed. One of his eyes was missing, replaced with a mechanical implant that glowed red. He was the second in command of the delegation, and he had killed more enemies than anyone could count. When he walked into the grooming room, felt her heart stop. Thresh was even more terrifying than. He moved like a weapon, every step precise and dangerous. Was watching from the doorway. He was not supposed to be there, but he could not stay away. He was certain he was about to watch his colleague die. Thresh stopped in front of. He looked down at her. She was so small compared to him. He could crush her with one paw. "You are the human," he said. His voice was like grinding metal. "Yes," said, her voice was steady. "I am the human who brushes fur. Would you like me to help you?" Thresh did not answer immediately. He stared at her for a long time. Then slowly he lowered himself to the floor. He lay on his stomach, his massive body spreading across the mats. His back was turned toward her. "My fur has not been properly groomed in 12 years," he said quietly. "Do what you can." Picked up a brush and began to work. The first stroke made Thresh's whole body tense. His claws extended automatically, digging into the mats, grabbed the doorframe, ready to run for help. Then made a soft shushing sound, the kind you might make to calm a frightened child. She continued brushing, slow and gentle. The tension in Thresh's body began to fade. His claws retracted. His breathing slowed. After 10 minutes, the purring started. It was deep and loud, like an engine running. The vibrations traveled through the floor, could feel them in his chest. He watched in amazement as the terrifying warrior melted under his gentle hands. She worked for 2 hours. She removed knots that had been there for years. She found mats so tight they had been pulling at his skin. She treated small wounds that had never healed properly because his fur covered them. Through it all, Thresh purred. When she finished, Thresh lay still for a moment. Then he slowly stood up. He turned to face. His single organic eye was wet with something that might have been tears. "I had forgotten," he said softly. "I had forgotten what it felt like to be cared for." He bent down and pressed his nose to his forehead just as had done. Then he turned and walked out of the room. He moved differently now, lighter, like a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Stared after him. He could not find the words. "That was just the beginning," said. She looked tired but happy. "I have 46 more to go." Word spread through the delegation like fire. Within days, all 47 on the station wanted to be groomed, created a schedule. Each was given a time slot. They were told to wait their turn. And they did. This was perhaps the most amazing part. The waited. These apex predators who had never waited for anything in their entire evolutionary history stood in orderly lines outside the grooming room. They did not push. They did not fight. They waited patiently, speaking to each other in quiet voices, watching the door. Station security could not believe what they were seeing. Officer submitted a report that said simply, "They are forming a queue. This is not a drill. They are forming a queue." The other species on the station noticed too. They watched the lines of massive predators waiting quietly for their turn. They saw who had terrified them for years walking out of the grooming room looking peaceful and content. They heard the purring through the walls. No one knew what to make of it. Worked every day. She brushed fur until her arms ached. She learned the name of every. She learned which ones liked firm strokes and which ones liked gentle ones. She learned which spots were sensitive and which ones were ticklish. She learned their stories. There was Thresh, the old warrior who had not been touched kindly in over a decade. There was Vila, a young scientist who was terrified of being seen as weak. There was a pilot who pretended to be tough but cried silently during every session. Each of them had suffered in silence. Each of them had been alone. Could not fix everything. She was just one person with a brush, but she could give them this small comfort. She could show them that someone cared. Started helping. He told himself it was just to assist with logistics, but soon he was brushing fur too. His steady hands and calm nature made him popular with the older. They called him Steady Paws and requested him specifically. Other humans on the station got curious. Some of them volunteered to help. Nurse was especially good with the younger and the cubs. She had a gentle voice and endless patience. The cubs loved her. They called her Soft Voice and followed her around the station like baby ducks. Something was changing on Harmony's edge. Something that no one had expected. The most feared species on the station was becoming the most peaceful, and it was all because of a few humans with brushes who were not afraid to show kindness. Did not realize yet how big this would become. She did not know that they were being watched by others. She did not know that enemies were already planning to stop what she had started. For now she just kept brushing, one at a time. Ambassador of the hegemony was not a happy creature. He was a tall, thin being with gray skin and 4 arms. His species looked like a mix between a praying mantis and a skeleton. They were known throughout the galaxy for their political tricks and schemes. They had built their empire not through strength, but through manipulation. For years, they had worked to keep the isolated. Isolated species were easier to control. If they had no friends, they had to rely on them for trade and support. This gave the power over them. It was a good arrangement, at least for the. Now a single human with a hairbrush was ruining everything. Had spies everywhere on Harmony's edge. They told him about the grooming sessions. They told him about the lines of waiting patiently. They told him about the purring and the tears and the gentle touches. They told him that the feared were becoming soft. Worse, they were becoming friendly with the humans. This could not be allowed to continue. If they allied with humanity, the balance of power in the galaxy would shift. They had worked too hard for too long to let that happen. Needed to stop it. He needed to destroy this connection before it grew stronger, and he knew exactly how to do it. He filed a formal complaint with the Galactic Council. The complaint was simple and clever. It accused Dr. Park of using unknown methods to manipulate the. Perhaps she was using chemicals in the grooming oils. Perhaps she had some kind of psychic ability. Perhaps the humans had developed secret technology to control other species. Whatever the method, it was clearly working. They were acting completely out of character. They were being manipulated. They were being controlled. The complaint demanded an investigation. It demanded that be detained and examined. It demanded that all grooming activities stop immediately until the truth could be discovered. Station Commander Han received the complaint on a quiet Thursday morning. She read it 3 times, rubbing her tired eyes. She had been commander of Harmony's Edge for 5 years. She had seen many strange things, but this might be the strangest. She pulled up the security footage from the grooming room. She watched brush fur. She watched the predators relax and purr. She watched them cry and thank her. There was no manipulation. There was no technology. There was just a small human woman being kind. But the complaint was official. It had to be addressed. If Commander Han ignored it, they could claim she was part of the conspiracy. They could demand her removal. They could cause serious problems. She sent a message asking her to come to her office. Arrived looking worried. She had heard rumors about the complaint. Bad news traveled fast on a space station. "Is it true?" asked. "Am I being detained?" Commander Han sighed. She was a practical woman with short gray hair and sharp eyes. She had served in the military before becoming a station commander. She knew how to handle difficult situations, but this one was complicated. "They have filed a complaint," she said. "They claim you're manipulating they want you investigated." "That's ridiculous," said. "I'm just brushing their fur. There's no manipulation. They're just lonely." "I know," Commander Han said. "I've seen the footage. There's nothing wrong with what you're doing, but they are powerful. If we don't address their complaint, they can make serious trouble for the station." Felt cold fear spread through her chest. She had not wanted any of this. She had just wanted to help. Now she was caught in the middle of galactic politics. "What do I do?" she asked. Before Commander Han could answer, an alarm went off. Red lights flashed. A voice announced over the station speakers, "Security alert. All personnel remain in place." Large movement detected in the section. Commander Han turned to her security monitors. Her eyes went wide. All 47 on the station were moving. They were walking through the corridors in formation. They were headed toward the human living quarters. They moved with purpose and determination. Their claws were extended. "Oh no," Commander Han whispered. Security officers throughout the station panicked. They thought it was an attack. They thought they had finally decided to kill the humans. They sent emergency messages to the Galactic Council. They prepared weapons that everyone knew would be useless against warriors. But they did not attack anyone. They walked past other species without a glance. They ignored the security officers pointing weapons at them. They had only one destination in mind. They stopped at the human habitat wing. They surrounded it completely. 47 massive predators formed a protective circle around the place where the humans lived. Ambassador stepped forward. She raised her head high and spoke in a voice that carried through the entire station. Attention, all species on Harmony's edge. I am ambassador of the Dominion. I speak for my people. Everyone listened. No one moved. We have learned that accusations have been made against the human called Park. We have learned that some wish to detain her, to take her away from us, to stop her kindness. His voice grew harder, sharper, like a blade being unsheathed. We will not allow this. Dr. Park is under protection. She has shown us kindness without expecting anything in return. She has eased suffering that we could not speak of. She has touched us when everyone else was afraid. She paused. Her next words rang through the corridors like thunder. Any action against her will be considered an act of war against the Dominion. Any being who threatens her will answer to us. She is ours to protect now. This is not a negotiation. This is a promise. Silence followed. No one on the station dared to breathe. In her office, Commander Han stared at the monitors. She saw 47 apex predators standing guard over the human quarters. She saw Thresh, the warrior, positioning himself at the main entrance. She saw young scientists standing shoulder to shoulder with ancient warriors. They were all united. They were all ready to fight. For one human woman who had brushed their fur. Ambassador watched from his quarters. His 4 hands trembled with rage. His plan had failed. Worse than failed. He had pushed them directly into the arms of the humans. Instead of breaking them apart, he had made them closer than ever. He sent a message to the Galactic Council withdrawing his complaint. He claimed it was a misunderstanding, a mistake. There was no manipulation. Everything was fine. No one believed him, but no one cared. The complaint was withdrawn. That was all that mattered. Commander Han called back to her office after everything calmed down. "Well," she said, "I think the investigation is canceled." Was still shaking from what had happened. She had watched 47 of the most dangerous beings in the galaxy form a wall around her home. They had been ready to go to war for her, over grooming sessions. "I never asked them to do that," she said quietly. "I know," Commander Han said. "That's why they did it. You gave them kindness without expecting anything back. You can't buy that kind of loyalty. You can only earn it." She leaned back in her chair and smiled slightly. "Congratulations, Dr. Park. I think you just changed galactic politics with a hairbrush." Did not feel like celebrating. She felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. They were counting on her now. They trusted her. They protected her. She would not let them down. When she returned to the grooming room the next day, there was already a line of waiting. Thresh was at the front. He pressed his nose to her forehead in greeting. "We heard you might leave us," he said. "We could not allow that." "I'm not going anywhere," promised. Thresh's face shifted into something that might have been a smile. "Good, because I believe it's my turn for a brushing." Laughed, picked up her brush, and got back to work. 1 year passed on Harmony's edge. The station that had once been a place of tension and fear became something different, something better. The grooming program had grown beyond anything had imagined. What started as one woman with a brush had become a whole team. Doctor was now the senior grooming coordinator, responsible for scheduling and supplies. His steady hands and calm nature had made him a favorite among the elders. They called him Stone Heart now, which was their way of saying he was dependable and trustworthy. Nurse ran the cub care program. She had become something like a second mother to all the young on the station. The cubs followed her everywhere, chirping and purring and demanding attention. She knew all their names, their favorite treats, their ticklish spots. The adult trusted her completely with their children, which was the highest honor they could give. Other humans had joined too. Engineers, scientists, medical staff, even a few security officers. They had all learned the art of grooming. They had all learned that showing kindness to these massive predators was not dangerous at all. It was wonderful. The galaxy watched in amazement as news spread. The apex predators of 12 star systems had formed a bond with the small, weak humans. It should have been impossible. Every expert said it was impossible, but it was happening anyway. Representatives from the home world came to investigate. They expected to find some trick, some manipulation, some hidden agenda. Instead, they found their people happy and healthy for the first time in years. They found mats and tangles gone from fur that had been neglected for decades. They found warriors laughing and cubs playing with tiny human children. They found peace. The High Council made a decision that shocked everyone. They requested an official alliance with the human coalition, not just a trade agreement, not just a peace treaty, a full alliance, the kind they had never offered to any species before. The signing ceremony was held on Harmony's Edge. It seemed fitting. This was where everything had started. This was where a small human woman had brushed a frightened cub's fur and changed history. Ambassadors came from dozens of species to witness the event. They came too, forced to smile and pretend they were happy about the alliance. Ambassador looked like he had swallowed something bitter. No one felt sorry for him. The ceremony was held in the largest gathering hall on the station. Hundreds of beings watched as ambassador and the human representative signed the documents. There were speeches about cooperation and mutual respect. There were promises about shared futures and combined strength. But the moment everyone remembered came at the end. A journalist from an interstellar news network approached Ambassador. She was a small creature with feathers and large eyes. She looked terrified to be so close to but she asked her question anyway. Ambassador, why? Of all the species in the galaxy, why did your people choose to ally with humanity? They are small, they are weak, they have no natural weapons. Why them? Looked at the journalist, then she looked at the crowd of watching beings. Her yellow eyes were calm and thoughtful. Every species in this galaxy saw us as monsters, she said. They saw our claws and our teeth and our strength. They saw predators to fear or weapons to use. They looked at us and saw death. She paused. The room was completely silent. Humans looked at us and saw something different. They saw creatures who needed their fur brushed. A soft murmur went through the crowd, continued. When we came to space, we left everything behind. Our families, our bonds, our traditions. We thought we had to be hard and cold to survive. We thought showing weakness was death, so we hid our loneliness. We hid our pain. We suffered alone because we were too proud to ask for help. Her voice softened. Then a human found my daughter tangled in cables. She could have walked away. She should have walked away. We are dangerous. Everyone knows we are dangerous. But she did not walk away. She sat down on a dirty floor and brushed my daughter's fur and hummed a soft song. She showed kindness to a frightened child without expecting anything in return. Looked across the room. In the corner stood beside her. Was bigger now, almost adult-sized, but she still pressed close to like a cub. That human taught us something we had forgotten, said. She taught us that being touched gently is not weakness, that asking for help is not shame, that being cared for is not something to hide. She turned back to the journalist. You ask why we chose humanity. The answer is simple. They were the first to see that we could be lonely. They were the first to care. The journalist was crying. She was not the only one. After the ceremony, there was a celebration. Food and drinks from 100 worlds, music and dancing, laughter and conversation. The station had never seen anything like it. Slipped away from the crowds. She found a quiet corner near a window that looked out at the stars. She was tired, happy but tired. She had never expected any of this. She had just wanted to help a lost cub. found her as she always did. The young curled up beside her, purring softly. She had grown so much in the past year. She was nearly as tall as now, but she still loved being brushed. She still made that happy chirping sound when touched her fur. "You're missing the party," said. "I know," replied. "I just needed a moment. It's all very overwhelming." "You changed everything," said. "My mother says you changed the galaxy." Laughed softly. "I just brushed some fur, that's all." "No," said firmly. "You did more than that. You saw us, really saw us, not as monsters, not as weapons, just as beings who needed kindness." She pressed her nose against forehead. "You gave us back something we thought we had lost forever." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars. After a while and found them. They brought food and drinks from the party. Thresh came too, his face soft with contentment. Then, taking a break from diplomatic duties. Then more and more humans until the quiet corner was not so quiet anymore. They talked and laughed and shared stories. Humans leaned against without fear, purred while human hands stroked their fur. Cubs played with human children, chasing each other around the adults' legs. Somewhere in the celebration, someone asked what she wanted to do next, now that she was famous, now that she had changed galactic politics, now that she could probably do anything she wanted. Thought about it for a moment, then she smiled. "I think I'd like to open more grooming stations," she said. "On other stations, other planets. There are a lot of species out there who might need someone to care for them. Maybe they aren't the only ones who are lonely." Made a rumbling sound of approval. "We will help. Wherever you go, they will go with you." "We all will," added, nodded in agreement. Looked at her strange, wonderful family. Massive predators and small humans. Scientists and warriors. Cubs and children. They had come together because of a simple act of kindness. They had stayed together because kindness, it turned out, was the strongest force in the galaxy. Outside the window, the stars stretched on forever. There were countless worlds out there, countless species, countless beings who might be lonely and afraid and waiting for someone to care. Picked up her brush. "Well then," she said, "let's get to work." And somewhere in the vastness of space, the galaxy slowly, gently began to change.